Hello, I have Emily V. Gordon with us today, which is very exciting. If you haven't heard of her, she's the co-writer of the film The Big Sick, based on her relationship with her husband, Kumail Nanjiani. She started out as a family and couples therapist before becoming a writer and comedy producer. Borrowing from your Twitter bio, which describes you as current writer, former comedy booker, former therapist, adamantly from North Carolina, co-writer of The Big Sick, and yep, I was in a coma. Like, you probably get that one a lot.
Like, hurry up and just like address that question before I get asked it. I was being asked that a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I bet. And that's how, you and I first connected over both having weird and wonderful autoimmune diseases. So I'm excited to have you here today to just share more about your story. When I was watching, or I saw the movie The Big Sick, at the end of it, because I didn't realize that was your story or your diagnosis. And
I love that. That's what we prefer, as when people don't know.
I had no idea. And so I was watching it, and as someone that's, been diagnosed with Still's disease for a while, I heard them say, "Oh, we believe it's adult onset Still's disease." And I think I audibly gasped in the theater, because I was like, I never hear that. It's pretty rare. You never hear about it. And so I was like, what? I had no idea. But definitely could identify with that. Like, she has this flu-like feeling, so I was like, yeah, okay. So yeah, absolutely loved that movie. And one thing I was thinking about is that, the movie kind of ended with you getting your diagnosis of Still's disease. And it was kind of, I was like feeling for you then, thinking like, okay, you're just leaving the hospital that time, like feeling really weak and kind of like, what just happened to me, and confused. Absolutely. And trying to figure it out. And I know a lot of times, with chronic disease in general, the diagnosis is just kind of the beginning, where it's like, okay, that's the beginning of the journey. So I guess I just want to know a little bit more about like that time in your life when you were kind of getting discharged from the hospital. What was going on then? What was life like then?
It was a little less cinematic, I would say, than after being discharged, I was really, really weak. And like you said, I was just kind of processing what had happened to me, because as I had been in a comatose state, I kind of wasn't aware of anything. And so I kind of woke up to, oh, my body is completely different than I thought it was. Everything is kind of shifted around. And it took me a while to kind of emotionally to adjust to this idea that like, oh, something is wrong with you, and it means you're going to have to change how you do things. And that took a while. I went through a period of anger, and then I went through a period of kind of just deep, like, oh my God, like, look at that. I could have missed seeing that bird, like something. And like this feeling of gratitude, and then kind of shifting into, okay, now what is this actually going to mean for my life? Physically, I was really, really, really weak, and my ankle was the joint that was most affected. And so I couldn't walk properly for quite some time, couldn't lift anything, because my muscles, when you see movies when people are in comas and they get up and start like kicking ass, or go to like a chocolate factory, whatever they do. No, I couldn't lift a jug of milk. Your muscles just kind of atrophy so quickly.
Yeah.
So a lot of it, I might put her away, because she's going to keep doing that.
Hold on. Go for it.
All right, buddy. Get out of here. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
And then it was understanding that I now had specialists. Before I was in the hospital, I went to a like community health center, and I saw whatever doctor was available. I didn't have a specific doctor. And I didn't realize how much, it's not their fault, but that really contributed to me not getting any kind of diagnosis, because everyone had a different opinion, and I didn't see the same person. So a lot of it was like adjusting to new doctors, and understanding that doctors were now going to be a big part of my life. And then, that was 10 years ago. And I just a year and a half ago got a new diagnosis to go with the Still's disease. And so when you say like it really starts with diagnosis, it starts with diagnosis, and then there's the adjustment period of like, oh, what's actually going on? Did this work? This might have worked, but it didn't work fully. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole journey. Do you mind if I ask what the second diagnosis
The second
is?
diagnosis is CVID, which is common variable immune disorder, I think is.
Got it. Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't, another one that's not, yeah, you don't hear too much about, but yeah.
It is more common than stills. And weirdly, since then, I've been able to kind of figure out when, and it's only been very recent, and I've gotten really good at listening to my body, as I think a lot of us do. I have sometimes it's the CVID, and then sometimes it's just stills that's giving me, I'm having an episode of that, and I'm starting to be able to figure out what that difference is.
Yeah.
And that's an intense thing, because I think they end up giving you medication that works, but it's not actually treating the problem. It's just making you feel slightly better.
Yeah.
And I think after a long time of, I feel slightly better as long as I'm on all of these medications, isn't really good enough anymore.
Right.
No fault to any doctors that I've had. So that's been the journey, is like figuring out how do I make it that I'm not constantly on medication and can still like do things in my life without having to schedule massive breaks.
Yeah, totally. And like you said, that being able to just like tune in and pay attention to these different symptoms, I think that, I mean, that could be one of the silver linings of having chronic disease, is like having that, intuition, being really in tune. Like I can tell the difference between different types of fevers. I'm like, ooh, that's this fever, so it's very,
weird
very
thing when
intense.
my eyes get really hot and they just look different. It's a specific kind of thing that I know that is like, that to me is a different thing than when I'm just sick. And really it's also a battle to not be so like, I don't know how to put this, to not scrutinize yourself so much that you're like constantly like, in terror of like, oh no, what is this? What is this? To kind of be aware that like, you're not always going to get it right. And it doesn't, not everything means that you're sick.
Yep.
Some stuff does.
Sometimes, for sure. Exactly. It's like that monitoring too can be a lot as well. In terms of like what you were saying about kind of trying to, like, you have the medications that are able to make you feel a lot better, which is amazing that we have those now. But in terms of like getting to the root cause or figuring out what's going on underneath, and continuing to investigate, what are the things that have been the most helpful for you?
I have a very, I was getting life insurance. My husband and I were going through like estate planning stuff, just completely randomly. And I was getting blood tested for the life insurance, and they came back and said, the level of antibody, you have literally 0 antibodies in your blood. Your body's not making, you don't have any. And I was like, oh, that's weird. But I go to a doctor like every few months, let me check and see what that blood test looks like. And the antibodies were really low, like there were none of them there either. And I thought, well, my doctor has been seeing me and he knows these numbers, so I'm sure there's some explanation. That doctor had never looked at those numbers. Because that doctor was a rheumatologist, and I'm not gonna, whatever, it doesn't really matter. He was a rheumatologist, but didn't think that number was in his purview, so he just ignored it. And never even told me that was a problem. And that did not sit well with me. And so I ended up finding another doctor, and the new doctor was kind of like, oh yeah, your body doesn't make antibodies. And so separate from, and that's where the CVID comes in, separate from the Still's disease, my body doesn't make antibodies. So I have no way of fighting off anything, including Still's.
Got it. Yep.
I was taking antibiotics and steroids to try to like get my body to like fight stuff. Yeah. Now what I have is I get other people's antibodies put into my system once a month. And then now I have the internal tools to fight it rather than trying to hit it from the outside.
Got it. And so that's the IVIG.
That's the IVIG.
Got it. And so that has made a really big difference for you.
That has made the biggest difference. That has kind of changed, completely changed my life. And I weirdly started getting it right after we took our movie to Sundance. It's all like too poetic, really, to like get into. But I couldn't, we traveled to promote this movie for a full year. I couldn't have done any of that without this treatment. I would have been just barely kind of hanging on, medicating from the outside. And that's not to say I don't still get sick and I don't still get episodes.
Yeah.
But they're not guaranteed to happen. Whereas before they were like, oh, it's guaranteed.
Right. Yes. Because that's what I was going to say too. I mean, you're so busy and have a lot going on, and like, you know, doing the movie, promoting the movie, going to award shows, winning awards, all, you know, all these things. Yeah. We'll focus on the winning. And all the events that go with that, you know, I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And I think about myself, you know, like, because I work as a nurse and then I work as a health coach as well. But like, just even scheduling my day around things like that, I have to be really mindful and knowing that my triggers are exhaustion and stress, like for sure. And that took me a really long time to really learn. But you know, how do you, I mean, obviously you have a good care team and doctors, and you found some good treatments that work. Like, how do you kind of on a daily basis manage all of that? And I know you're doing some writing. Like, I just saw you're writing Little America, a series for Apple, which looks so cool. But how, you know, like, you got a lot going on. How do you day to day manage it?
I think it is, and there's so much lady stuff wrapped up in this, because we are taught, especially if we want to be successful, we're taught that we're supposed to burn ourselves out. We're supposed to destroy ourselves to be successful and to have it all. Otherwise, it means we don't actually care. We're not willing to go for it. Yep. And recognizing that in myself was a big part of it at first, because I had a really stressful job before I got really sick. And then now my job is stressful, but it's a little more manageable because it's a little more on my schedule. But when we started promoting this movie, we had like PR people, and we would get our schedules, and our schedules would be packed. And it's normal. That's normal. Our schedule would be packed. Literally, they would say, you don't really need lunch, do you?
Yeah.
And we had to have like a sit down, both Camille and I did have a sit down with the people and say, listen, you know, the movie that we made about this illness, like, it's not made up. It's real. And if you lose me, we don't get to do any PR. And there's a really real chance that this could hurt me. Mm-hmm. And so then we had to go back in. We literally were like, we went to Judd Apatow and said, can you talk? Because they were listening to us, but not really. And then Judd came in and was like, don't make them do all this. And they scaled back our PR schedule. And they're lovely human beings. That's just part of what their job is kind of, but what's sad is I don't think anybody should have to handle that kind of a schedule. And I would not have spoken up for myself if it had not been that this movie was about my illness. Mm-hmm. If the movie was about anything else, I wouldn't feel, and this is just a very honest, I don't know that I would feel comfortable saying I can't do all this because I'm a sick person. Yeah. And that's hard to kind of manage. About myself. So I'm happy that the movie was about that. Yeah. So then I could advocate for myself and have the evidence to back it up. And I hope that in the future I'll be able to do that. But as it is now, I have to be, I schedule travel carefully. I schedule meetings carefully. I don't have an assistant that schedules things for me, because I know the assistant doesn't know how I'm doing on a day-to-day. Yeah, so an assistant might schedule 4 things back to back, whereas I know I need 2 things and I need a space between them. Yep. Because it all adds up, and I only have so much to go. I don't have that much energy. Yeah. And it's not an accident that I've chosen a career that I can do here. Yeah. When I was a therapist, I was working really, really long hours. Yeah. And when you're on set for things, or when you're in a writer's room, you're often doing long hours. When I writing screenplays, which is what I'm doing primarily now, I can do it here. Yeah. Yep. And so I don't have to kind of expend the extra energy of getting there, talking to all the people because all that, I don't have enough. I don't have enough to do the social part of work as well as working. Yep. You know, I mean, I'm sure, you know, some days it's hard to even get dressed and kind of figure out. Yeah. And so I'm happy to have a career currently that I don't have to worry about that part of it as much. And it's not an accident. I mean. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's like it always kind of comes down to like boundaries, I think, with me, and even like scheduling boundaries, or, you know, saying no to things, boundaries, conserving energy, finding ways that you're letting out energy, like all of that. So it sounds like for you, that's one of the biggest things is scheduling that rest or downtime to be able to have that recharging,
Totally. Yeah. And I think you're right. It is a bit of a lady thing. Like I have so many clients that it's this, chronic illness or not, is kind of the same. But it definitely gets exacerbated in chronic illness and feeling like you really have to push. And
like kind of less than I still feel guilty when I tell people, oh, I can't come in that day. Like I need a bit of a break. I'll be able to do it someday later this week. I still feel bad, like every single time. And that's something I'm working on. And weirdly, that's what's so strange is like having this movie has given me the backup I never needed. We shouldn't need.
Yeah.
But having this movie has given me the, like, I can just point and go, so that was real.
That was
real. but what it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. I know. I think we definitely need to figure out how we can collectively sort of change that and be okay with like resting and doing nothing and taking that time and setting boundaries. But it is a total challenge, but that's the same for me, that thing, that, and then making sure that I am, have good food and I'm like eating well and drinking water, stuff like that. But
it's really basic stuff.
It's the most basic stuff. And it's like really doing all of that. So did you find that like when you got through that whole award season and everything, you were feeling okay, or were you pretty depleted and felt like you needed to?
I was pretty depleted. I took a few days off after, literally, as soon as the Oscars happened. And listen, that night I did stay out quite late. But like right after it happens, everything just stops. And so we've gone from like doing something every night, having stuff all day long, to kind of having nothing. And I really really needed it. We were going to take a vacation, but I was like, I need 2 weeks before I can even go on a vacation just in case go sideways. And as it was, I got sick while we were on vacation. But we handled it. I just we canceled the 2 days plans. We stayed in our hotel and it was okay. And also realizing that it is okay. Because I think maybe in the past I would have been like, no, I'm fine. And then gone to like see elephant preserves while I'm like,
this is really horrible. This is so great. Yeah.
We've all done that. I mean, until your body stops you. Yeah. That's the thing I always say, like, I didn't listen to my body for years and I kind of treated it really poorly. And my body was like, okay, we're done. Like, you're not going to stop. I'll stop you. I'll take care of this for you. Yeah. And, now I listen to it. Now I listen to her.
Exactly. That I had a client tell me that her family joked that she didn't have any nerve endings because she would be in a room and it would be like freezing and she wouldn't notice. And someone would say like, Mom, aren't you cold? And she'd be like, I am really cold. Like she wouldn't know. And she said it was from years of, and it made me so sad, but she said it was from years of being a mom and caring for her 3 kids and pushing down just not needing to listen to her body because it meant that it would have to slow her down. And if she just took care of everyone else, then it was okay. So what we worked together on was I was like, you do have nerve endings and we're going to find them and we're going to tune in there. But
and also the thing of not feeling worthy of making a fuss or voicing your opinion, that if you have to stop because you're not feeling well, that's not worth other people's time. That was, like I went on dates. I was so sick and was going on dates with Kumail and literally just like locking myself in a bath. He had no idea. Locking myself in a bathroom and just being like, come on, you can do this. You can do this.
Yeah.
Like, what was I afraid would happen? Like that I'd be like, I don't feel well. And he'd be like, see ya. And just it's such an interesting thing to look back on, but like, I never thought I would be a person that would kind of think about myself like that. And I absolutely was. So. Yeah.
Oh no, I know. I think a lot of people are too. Yeah. And definitely like that was your relationship then. How is it kind of, I don't want to say like affected your relationship, but cause it is what it is, but what, cause we're never an island with our chronic illness or what we're doing. So how is it with Kumail or?
It's interesting. It's very interesting. Kumail's reaction to me being sick, when he found out how sick I was, his reaction, and I don't think he would mind me saying this, was to feel massively guilty that he didn't notice, that somehow he didn't catch. He keeps telling me about it, that they were when I was in the hospital, he said that they came and told him that I was massively undernourished, that I literally didn't have any nerve because I just couldn't eat. I was so sick.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, how did I not notice that this was happening? Like, and so what that meant was that once I got out of the hospital, he became like a lion in protecting me in ways that were both beautiful and also way too much. And it was something we had to work on, that literally if I sneezed, he would like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Is everything, what do we need to do? And then it became this bizarre thing where like, I was like, no, I'm okay. But wait, am I okay? And then we were just,
whoa, yeah.
Like, it was such a difficult thing to navigate. And it literally, he is still kind of a lion when it comes to that. And I'm so grateful for it, because when I wasn't willing to advocate for myself, he was advocating for me so hard that I kind of ended up taking lessons from him. But literally even now, last week, I just had a stomach ache. I like ate something weird. And he was like, the next morning, he was like, I couldn't sleep last night because you had a stomach ache. Hey, you can't. And this has been 10 years. Yeah. So he's incredibly supportive, but also I think we don't realize and selfishly, all I'm thinking about is myself, especially after it happened, but we don't realize how it affects the people around us, and how they're kind of going through a version of trauma too, because it's such a helpless, he kept saying it's such a helpless feeling to watch someone struggle that way, and you don't have any answers and you can't really do anything.
Yeah.
And so it's not to say that he, deserves more sympathy than I do, because I do deserve it. But it's interesting, like we've over a 10-year period have kind of like have figured out ways to navigate this feeling of how you take care of me, how I'm okay with you taking care of me, and how I don't, and what I don't need when it comes to care. But emotionally, I think it shattered him in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
In different ways than it shattered me. And us kind of coming to grips with that has been interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Like he's probably gone through his own journey with it, figuring out how to be a carer. Yeah, right? But we won't focus on that.
What's interesting, he gave a speech. I got a thing. I got like a lovely award from my doctor at like this charity event last year, and he was supposed to introduce me. And my husband, stand-up comedian, can speak in crowds, got up to give this speech and started sobbing so uncontrollably.
Oh my God.
I was like, I don't think he's going to be able to get through. There was like stuff on the computer. And then everybody was crying. And I was like, oh, it's the first time you've had to like publicly speak. We talk about the movie all the time.
Yeah.
It was the first time he'd actually talked about what the illness has been like for him and for me and for us.
Yeah.
It's the first time he'd kind of like talked about it publicly, and he was a damn mess. And it was really beautiful. I was like, this has been a trauma for him too.
Yeah.
And so it's just something we kind of navigate. So he's good about helping me take care of myself. And he's now over years been good about helping me. He's been good about letting me take care of myself.
Right. Yeah.
Rather than being like, I have to help. Like,
Yeah. I think we learn. I mean, I've learned that too as well. Like you can't actually fix, something or someone. You just can't.
Yeah.
That's it. But that's really interesting how it's kind of played out over time, and how you have this movie representation and your actual life, and how that's kind of weirdly influenced things. I find that really interesting. Yeah.
How are your parents with you about all this stuff?
Parents? Yeah. Well, when I first got diagnosed with stools, I was in the hospital too, but I wasn't in a coma. So I don't have to have that disclaimer on my, on my bio, but they were just beside themselves. I mean, they had no idea, because I was totally healthy before. And then, health, I mean, I look back and I'm like, okay, there was,
all kinds of stuff going on.
Things, but I thought, I don't know, I'm like running and playing soccer and stuff. But it really, really challenging with them. And then, so after I spent a summer, I got out of the hospital, spent a summer recovering. And then I went to California for college, because I was like, oh no, I'm going to do this still. Yeah. And they were like, whoa, like that was, cause I live in Seattle. So I was going away. And so that was a tough thing, but I was like you, where I'm like, oh, no, I'm just going to pull it together and do this. And man, that was a hard year.
because they want to keep you there so they can like take care of you. And
yeah, I can imagine, like, yeah, exactly. Same as what your parents were going through too, you know? I mean, I'm basing this off of the movie, but I feel like
and they came to Chicago and then went back to North Carolina, and that was hard for them. And my mom still, especially with the CVID stuff, she was like, well, maybe you won't have to get this treatment forever.
Yeah.
And I was like, Mom, I don't think my body's just going to start making antibodies on its own. And she was like, well, you never know. And it's like,
You never know. You never know.
I think she like has this like, it's easier for her to think all this could fix itself.
Yeah.
Everything could be okay. Like maybe you won't have to do this. Cause I think, she just, I guess, and I don't have children, but like you don't want anything bad to ever, you just want them to be like perfectly healthy all the time. Yeah. It's a hard thing to come to terms with, I imagine.
Oh yeah, I know. And then to have it feel like it's out of your control too, I think.
Yeah.
I know, definitely. Yeah. And I was just thinking, it came into my head earlier today, and this is kind of off topic about your personal experience, but I was thinking about I saw how you're writing that, the Little America movie or series for Apple about, story of American immigrants and all of that. And it's obviously a very poignant time for something like that to come out. Yeah. But I was just, yeah. But I work as holistic healthcare practitioner. And so when people think of like holistic health in terms of chronic disease and autoimmune disease, it's always like green smoothies or meditation or, whatever, stuff like that, which it is, I love a green smoothie, but it's not everything. And, when I was thinking about this and what I wanted to ask you about is like this idea of whole person health and holistic health as these really fundamental, core elements of us and our being, like feeling safe. And, and I think like you spoke about, or we've been hearing more too, like one of the main determinants is like poverty and oppression and all of these things as holistic health. And so I just was thinking about like my role as like a holistic healthcare practitioner. And what I want to speak about is all of these really foundational things when it comes to health and wellness, as opposed to like just the green smoothies and these things. But what are your thoughts on like that sort of whole person holistic health as it relates to either you or like what you've been thinking about with writing?
Well, it's so interesting because it's like when I was a therapist, I worked with often very, very troubled populations, like low socioeconomic status populations. And there's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is like health and safety, like actualization is like so near, like it's very low on the list, because first you need to have health and safety. You need to have people around you that are supportive. And I know we keep saying health and safety, but so often safety ends up becoming the only one that is addressed. Yeah. I have friends now who going to see a doctor is a luxury and is not something that they are able to do because they can't get off work. They don't have health insurance. Even if they do, they're not taken seriously when they go to the doctor. I'm born and raised quite privileged. I have there's no like systemic things that made me this sick. Yeah. That's not what it is. Whatever it is for me is genetic, combined with the pressures I put on myself, which is also a luxury. The luxury to put stress on yourself. Yeah. Yes. And it's such an interesting thing that we have so many battles to fight with the oppressed people in this country alone, obviously in the world, but we have so many battles to fight that wellness aspect of it gets sent to the back of the pack, but it's so essential, and it's it's such a big part of it. And that eating awful food every day is part of what's making you sick, but there's no other options. It's a food desert. There's nothing there. And also faulting people for finding a little bit of joy that is perhaps cheap and a little painful to your body. Yeah. It's not fair that we fault people for that. I mean, I did the same thing. I sought I sought out all kinds of things that were not helping my body and not feeding my temple. Yeah. But I was miserable. So I needed something to pick me up. And sometimes it was trashy food. Sometimes it was drugs. Like you don't. Yeah. And to pretend that those things all work together. These aren't people that are hurting their bodies because they want to hurt their bodies and they don't care about themselves. These are people doing the best they can with the tools they have. And it's our job to give them better tools so that they can start paying attention to how their bodies feel. It's a luxury to be able to like pay attention to your body.
Yeah. Yes.
A complete luxury.
Yeah.
I have friends that I have a friend who literally, I swear, I have a friend that over the weekend showed me a scar on his body and said, well, I got cut, but I didn't have health insurance. So he glued his stomach back.
Oh my God.
And it wasn't a hugely horrible thing, but like, I was like, yeah, that's like, absolutely. Absolutely. That was the best you could have done. This is a friend I've had for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, no one's valuing their bodies. Their bodies, a lot of people in this country, their bodies are undermined and oppressed and just shot at and hurt on a daily basis. So are we surprised that that's an internalized view? For God's sakes, like it's a miserable thing. And I'm lucky that I have the healthcare to get the treatment I needed. Yeah. And I didn't have this treatment for 10 full years, and I limped by. Yeah. With as privileged as I am, I limped by. Mm-hmm. And imagine, I think about the people who didn't have even that privilege to limp by and what they're experiencing now, to advocate for themselves with doctors, to ask questions and not just take whatever they give you the first time. And it breaks my heart. It absolutely breaks my heart.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. That is just so spot on what you've said. And it's like, I can't, when we talk about this whole person health, we can't not talk about all of those different things too. And how everybody's just kind of doing the best they can where they're at. And like, victimizing it, or even with like, weight, it's saying all you need to do is lose weight to be healthy. And I have so many clients that come to me and they're like, I can't, I don't know how, for so many different reasons. And so I just wanted to get your take on that, to kind of highlight that like, there's so many other things going on in that hierarchy of needs too, that we need to consider for this like holistic whole person health. And I'm really adamant about us considering all of that, as opposed to just what we see on Instagram as health, like holistic health. It's much more simple.
I've been doing yoga poses. It's like, well, of course. I would roll my eyes at that too. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like, there's great stuff in there, and that's super beneficial, but there's a lot of other things to consider too. So
absolutely.
I
love yoga too. It's just,
me too.
Yoga proponent. It's interesting. I see why people look at that and think this is ridiculous. Like, because if you're struggling to figure out how to get to work, like get food on the table, the idea of like, oh, yoga will fix it is bonkers.
It's hard.
But yoga will fix it in some ways. Yoga can help, but it's just not, it's weirdly not, there's a lot of PR around holistic stuff that could be better. That could be maybe more accessible and a little less highfalutin I think that would help maybe. I don't know.
Accessibility for sure. And having, people like you come and talk about your story and your journey and what, it's been like for you. And, having a higher profile job now and doing all these awesome, amazing things, but, how do you manage it? How do you make this work in your life? I think it's just good to hear other people's stories so people can, get some support and encouragement and hope from that. So I'm really thankful that you were able to share your story and your time. And I think it is really, really helpful for people, not just with Still's disease or anything like that, but anyone really going through this chronic illness and trying to, live a full, vibrant life, which is 100% possible, but sometimes it feels hard to do that. So,
yeah. And it's also never done. Like I could tell you like, oh, I'm so great now and everything's great.
Yeah.
Like, no, I struggle with stuff all the time, emotionally and physically still. And I don't want people to take that as like, oh no, so this is awful. No, it's wonderful because like we're not ever done as people. And it's okay to keep struggling with it. You're not going to be done, but the struggle is kind of the beautiful part. If you like are waiting for the struggle to be over for your life to start, it's not going to. So like, let's dig in and find a way to enjoy the struggle the best we can, because none of it's going to stop. Oh God, this is so pessimistic. I mean it in the best way. Like that's
I know.
what life is. Like you can't like wait for like everything to be perfectly set up to kind of like be fulfilled. Fulfillment has to come with all this baggage.
Yeah. No, totally. No, it's so I know I know what you're saying. I 100% know what you're saying for sure. And like, if someone is in the position right now where they are really struggling with finding answers with, you know, their chronic illness, whether it be getting a diagnosis or just finding the right treatment, or how to incorporate some of these more holistic concepts in their life, what do you say to them? Like, if they're there right now, like, what do I do next? Maybe it's like that tuning in. I don't know.
I think it is tuning in, making sure you're listening to your body, and then keep asking questions. You've got to keep advocating for yourself. And I'm not the best example of that. As I've said, I only have done it sometimes because I had this like backup behind me. But like, find your backup, find what that backup is, and find whatever excuse you need. A trick I use is if I feel like I can't do something, I pretend to be someone else doing it. I pretend to be the person who could do it. And if anybody wants to pretend to be me, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Like, don't advocate for yourself. And if you think there's no way I could do that, find in your head the person who could do it and just pretend to be that person. And it'll hurt and it'll be difficult. But it's just a muscle. Advocating for yourself is just a muscle. And the more you use it, the better you get at it. You're not always going to be great, but you got to advocate for yourself. You can't just let this stuff go by and be like, oh, hopefully it'll fix itself. Keep asking questions and just take care of yourself, and know that you're not always going to be great at that either. And don't beat yourself up about that either.
Yeah, exactly. It's a total journey for sure. Yeah, we know. You know. Oh man. Well, thank you so much. I know you're off to your appointment now, which is very, very good timing.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being here and sharing more about your story.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate what you do. You're doing an amazing service.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. So this will be great. And I'm sure after this, everyone will want to follow you and hear more about the awesome things you're doing. So yeah, keep it up. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.